A usual day at the cafe. It was a quiet Tuesday morning, and I was getting ready for another regular day at the cafe. Every day at work was almost the same: opening the cafe, arranging the chairs, and making sure everything looked clean and tidy for our customers. The air smelled of freshly brewed coffee and warm croissants, filling the cafe with a cozy feeling. The cafe where I worked was small but popular. People often came in for a quick cup of coffee before work, or sometimes they stayed a bit longer, chatting with friends or reading a book by the window. I liked working there because I enjoyed meeting new people and hearing their stories, even if they were just small conversations. Some customers came every day, and I knew their names and their favorite orders. That morning was quiet, with just a few people coming in. I served a couple of cappuccinos, a hot chocolate for a child, and a few pastries for someone in a hurry. The clock was ticking slowly, and I was starting to wonder if it would be one of those long, uneventful days. Suddenly, as I was wiping the counter, the door opened, and two people walked in. They were a couple, a husband and wife. I hadn't seen them in the cafe before, so I assumed they were new customers. The couple looked a little different from the usual people who came in. They were nicely dressed, as if they were on their way to an important meeting, but they also seemed relaxed. The husband wore a dark suit, while the wife had on a simple but elegant dress. They smiled as they entered, looking around the cafe as if they were happy to have found this small, cozy place. They walked over to one of the tables by the window and sat down. I watched them for a moment as they settled in. The husband placed his briefcase beside his chair and began looking at the menu. The wife sat quietly for a moment, but seemed a little anxious, tapping her fingers lightly on the table. I wasn't sure if they were in a hurry, but something about them told me that they had something on their minds. I walked over to their table with my usual friendly smile. "Good morning. Welcome to our cafe. What would you like to order today?" I asked. The husband glanced up from the menu and smiled. "Good morning," he said politely. "I'll have a cappuccino, please." He seemed relaxed and calm, taking his time with the order. The wife, however, seemed to be in more of a rush. She quickly said, "I'll have a latte, but please make it extra hot." She looked at me with a slightly stressed expression, as if she needed everything to be just right. "Of course," I said, nodding as I wrote down their order. "One cappuccino and one extra hot latte. I'll bring them over shortly." As I walked back to the counter to prepare their drinks, I couldn't help but think about how different they seemed from other customers. Most people who came to the cafe were either relaxed, looking for a break from their busy day, or simply there to enjoy a good cup of coffee. But this couple, especially the wife, seemed like they had something else on their minds. Perhaps a busy schedule, or maybe they were on their way to an important event. While I prepared the drinks, I could hear bits of their conversation. They were speaking softly, but in the quiet cafe, their words were easy to hear. The wife spoke first. "I told you we should have left earlier," she said, sounding a little frustrated. Her voice was low but firm. The husband didn't seem bothered. He calmly replied, "We still have time. Don't worry, everything will be fine." She sighed, still tapping her fingers on the table. It was clear that she was feeling stressed about something, but the husband remained calm, as if he knew that everything was under control. As I finished making their drinks, I thought about how interesting it was to see people like this in the cafe. Every customer had their own story, their own worries, and their own way of dealing with things. Even though they were strangers to me, I felt like I could understand a little about them just from their short conversation. I carefully placed the cappuccino and the extra hot latte on a tray and walked over to their table. "Here you go," I said with a smile, placing the drinks in front of them. "One cappuccino and one extra hot latte. I hope you enjoy." The wife immediately took a sip of her latte. She paused for a moment, then smiled. "It's perfect," she said, looking up at me. Her mood seemed to lighten instantly. I felt a sense of relief and happiness seeing her relax. It was amazing how something as simple as a cup of coffee could change a person's mood. The husband thanked me as well, giving me a kind smile. I nodded and returned to the counter, giving them some space to enjoy their drinks. For a while, they sat in silence, sipping their coffee, but soon they started talking again, and this time their conversation was lighter. They were smiling and even laughing a little. Whatever had been stressing them earlier seemed to fade away as they enjoyed their time in the cafe. As I worked, I glanced over at them every now and then. They were no longer in a rush or worried. Instead, they looked comfortable and happy, enjoying each other's company. It was a small, simple moment, but it reminded me of why I enjoyed working in the cafe. It wasn't just about serving coffee. It was about creating a space where people could relax and enjoy a little bit of peace in their busy lives. Later, as they finished their drinks, the husband called me over. "Thank you for the wonderful coffee," he said, "and for your kindness. It's been a busy day, but this little break made it much better." The wife nodded in agreement. "Yes, we'll definitely come back. This cafe is a nice place." I smiled, feeling a warm sense of satisfaction. "I'm glad you enjoyed it. We'd love to see you again," I said as they left the cafe, waving goodbye. I watched them walk down the street hand in hand. The moment they had shared in the cafe was simple, but it made me realize how important these little experiences are. Even on a quiet Tuesday, something interesting and meaningful can happen. You never know who will walk through the door and how a simple cup of coffee can brighten someone's day. As the cafe door closed behind them, I went back to my work, but I couldn't stop thinking about the couple and how something so small, just a cappuccino and a latte, had made such a difference. It was a reminder that even on the most ordinary days, something special could happen. Chapter 2. A busy afternoon. After the husband and wife left the cafe that morning, I continued with my work. I cleaned the tables, refilled the sugar jars, and made sure the coffee machine was ready for the next round of customers. It was still quiet, but I knew that the afternoon would get busier around lunchtime. The cafe always filled with people, especially office workers looking for a quick break or something to eat. As the clock struck 12:30, the rush started. The doorbell rang constantly as more and more people came in. The sound of chatter filled the air, and the smell of coffee mixed with the aroma of freshly baked pastries and sandwiches. It was the busiest time of the day, and I had to move quickly to keep up with all the orders. "Can I get a large black coffee, please?" asked a man in a hurry. He was holding a briefcase in one hand and checking his phone with the other. "Yes, of course," I said, quickly preparing his coffee and handing it to him. He smiled, said, "Thank you," and rushed out the door without even taking a seat. Many people were like that during the lunch rush, always on the go. Next in line was a group of 3 friends. They looked like they were having a good time, laughing and chatting as they waited to order. One of them, a young woman with curly hair, stepped up to the counter and said, "We'll take 3 iced lattes, please, and could you add some vanilla syrup to one of them?" "Sure thing," I replied, writing down their order and getting to work. Behind them was an older woman standing patiently. She seemed calm and relaxed, the opposite of most of the other customers. When it was her turn, she smiled warmly and said, "I'd like a cup of tea, please. No sugar." I smiled back. "Coming right up," I said, happy to see someone who wasn't in a rush. The line kept growing and I was moving as fast as I could. In between orders, I had to make sure the tables were cleaned and the display case was stocked with fresh pastries. I was so busy that I barely had time to think about the couple from earlier that morning, though their visit had left a lasting impression on me. As the afternoon wore on, I started noticing some regular customers. One of them was Mr. Thompson, an older man who came in every day like clockwork. He always ordered the same thing, a small black coffee and a slice of apple pie. He was quiet and kind, and I had gotten used to seeing him sit in the corner reading his newspaper. When Mr. Thompson walked in that day, I already knew what he would ask for. "Good afternoon, Mr. Thompson," I greeted him with a smile. "The usual?" He chuckled softly. "Yes, the usual, please," he said, handing me his money. "You know me too well." I quickly prepared his coffee and warmed up a slice of apple pie. As I handed it to him, he nodded in thanks and went to sit at his usual table. It was a simple routine, but there was something comforting about it. I liked the regulars. They made the cafe feel like a familiar, friendly place, even on the busiest days. Later in the afternoon, when the rush had died down a little, I had a chance to catch my breath. I took a moment to sit behind the counter and sip some water. The cafe was quieter now, with just a few people sitting at the tables, reading or working on their laptops. It was always interesting to see the different kinds of people who came to the cafe. Some came for a quick coffee, while others stayed for hours, lost in their own world. As I looked around, I saw a woman sitting alone by the window. She was typing on her laptop, her brow furrowed in concentration. She had been there for a while, and I noticed that her coffee cup was empty. I decided to check in on her. "Excuse me," I said as I approached her table. "Would you like a refill on your coffee?" The woman looked up, surprised. "Oh yes, please," she said with a tired smile. "That would be great. I've been working all day." I took her cup and refilled it with fresh coffee. "Here you go," I said as I handed it back to her. "Good luck with your work." "Thank you," she said. "I've got a deadline, and I'm trying to finish this report before the end of the day." I nodded, understanding her situation. Many people came to the cafe to work, and I admired their focus and determination. It wasn't easy to stay productive in a busy environment, but somehow people like her managed to do it. As the day went on, I couldn't help but think about the different stories that passed through the cafe every day. Each customer had their own life, their own problems, and their own reasons for being there. Some came for a quick break, others for comfort, and some, like the woman working on her laptop, came to escape the distractions of home or the office. It made me realize that the cafe was more than just a place to get coffee. It was a space where people could come and be themselves, whether they were in a rush or just looking for a quiet moment. I liked being a part of that, even in small ways, by making a perfect cup of coffee or offering a kind word to someone who looked stressed. As the afternoon turned into evening, the cafe started to quiet down again. The rush of people had slowed, and there were only a few customers left. I began to clean up, wiping down the tables and preparing for closing time. Just as I was about to take out the trash, the door opened, and the husband and wife from that morning walked back in. I was surprised to see them again, but happy as well. They had seemed so stressed earlier, but now they were smiling and holding hands. "We're back," the wife said cheerfully as they walked up to the counter. I smiled. "It's nice to see you again. What can I get for you this time?" The husband looked at his wife with a grin. "I think we'll both have cappuccinos this time," he said. "We had such a good experience this morning, we couldn't resist coming back." I prepared their cappuccinos and brought them over to their table. This time they seemed completely at ease, laughing and talking like they had all the time in the world. As they sipped their drinks, I couldn't help but feel happy for them. Whatever had been bothering them earlier in the day was now gone, replaced by a sense of calm and contentment. It reminded me of how powerful small moments could be. Sometimes all it took was a good cup of coffee and a little time to relax. When they finished their drinks, the husband came up to me and said, "Thank you for making our day a little brighter. We've had a long day, but coming here helped us slow down and enjoy the moment." The wife nodded in agreement. "Yes, thank you. We'll definitely be back again soon." I waved as they left the cafe for the second time that day, feeling a sense of satisfaction. It wasn't every day that you got to make such a difference in someone's life, even in a small way. I was glad that the cafe could be a place where people like them could find a moment of peace. As I finished cleaning up and prepared to close the cafe for the night, I reflected on the day. It had been busy, but it had also been full of interesting moments. Some small, some big, but all meaningful in their own way. It made me feel a little sad for them, though I didn't know why. After a while, the husband stood up and walked over to the counter. "Could I ask you for a favor?" he said quietly. "Of course," I replied. "What can I do for you?" He hesitated for a moment, as if he wasn't sure how to say what he wanted to say. Then he smiled, though it was a bittersweet smile. "This will probably be our last time coming here. My wife and I are moving to another city soon. We've loved coming to this cafe, and I was wondering if you could write a little note on our bill, just something nice that we can remember this place by." I felt a pang of sadness when he said they were moving. It was always hard when regulars left, especially when you had gotten to know them over time. "Of course," I said, trying to keep my voice cheerful. "I'll write something special for you both." He nodded, looking grateful, and returned to his table. As I prepared their bill, I thought carefully about what to write. It had to be something simple but meaningful, something that would remind them of the good times they had spent here. After a moment, I picked up a pen and scribbled a short message. "Thank you for making our cafe a part of your story. We'll miss you both, and we hope wherever you go, you always find a place as warm and welcoming as you have been to us. Best wishes from all of us at the cafe." I placed the note on their bill and brought it over to their table. The wife smiled when she saw it, and I could tell from the way her eyes glistened that she was touched by the gesture. "Thank you," she said softly. "This place has been a little escape for us during some busy times. We'll miss it." I nodded, feeling a lump in my throat. "We'll miss you too," I said honestly. "It's been wonderful having you here." The husband paid the bill, and for a moment, none of us said anything. It was one of those quiet, meaningful moments where words didn't seem enough. I wished them the best, but I also wished they didn't have to leave. In a way, they had become part of the cafe's story just as much as the cafe had become part of theirs. Before they left, the wife gave me one last smile. "We'll remember this place," she said softly. "Thank you for everything." I watched as they walked out the door for the last time, hand in hand. The cafe felt a little emptier without them, and I knew it wouldn't be the same. But I also knew that life moved on, and new customers would come in, bringing their own stories and experiences. The rest of the day passed slowly, and as the evening came, I started closing up the cafe. It had been a long day, and though I was tired, I couldn't stop thinking about the couple. I wondered where they were going and what kind of new life they would have in their new city. I hoped that they would find another cafe that made them feel as welcome as ours did. As I wiped down the last table, I thought about how every day in the cafe was filled with little moments that meant so much. Some of those moments were happy, like when the couple first came in, laughing and smiling. Others were more bittersweet, like today, when they said their goodbyes. But each of those moments was important in its own way, and they all added up to something bigger. Working in the cafe had taught me so much. It had taught me about people, about kindness, and about how even the smallest things, like a cup of coffee, could make a difference in someone's day. It wasn't just about serving drinks. It was about being part of people's lives, even if only for a short while. As I locked the door and turned off the lights, I felt a sense of closure. The couple's story had come to an end in our cafe, but new stories would begin tomorrow, and I would be there, ready to greet them with a smile and a fresh cup of coffee. Life, like the cafe, was always moving forward. People came and went, but the connections we made along the way, those little moments of joy, comfort, and kindness, were what made it all worthwhile.